Hi everybody. Today I want to talk about how the visual motor system is connected to just in general the body, because so often parents think that issues with eye tracking, with visual perception, visual processing, letter reversals, all that kind of stuff is just something that's going on strictly in the eye. And I can't tell you, I don't want to say how many times, it's not like it's an insane amount, but enough to make me go, this is insane, where children will have some sort of instability in the eye and they will go for a surgery, or they might even go for multiple surgeries. And I've heard this from other colleagues who are working in my field as well. And it really is not that productive, and that's why they're going for multiple surgeries, and it's because it does not start in the eye. And that's what I want to talk about today, because what the research has found is that strong visual motor skills are one of the most important skills for early learning. And what they found is that there is a very strong link with strong visual motor function and academics, that it will affect reading, writing, learning, and it will even impact focus and so forth. And so if that system, if the visual motor system is weak, it's going to slow everything down. And it's not just going to slow down the obvious things like reading and writing, it's even going to affect things like body movement and, as I mentioned, focus. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I've talked quite a bit about primitive reflexes in recent weeks, and that's really important to understand. And understanding that a lot of the times when I was talking about primitive reflexes, I was also talking about, if this reflex or that reflex is retained, it could affect vision, visual processing, all of that type of stuff. So I want to get into that just a little bit today, just so that you better understand how that all works, and then share with you what really needs to be addressed in order to actually improve your child's visual processing, letter reversals, slow reading, all of that type of stuff. So what basically happens is that the eyes take in this visual information, and we need strong visual perception in order to perceive and carry out what the body wants to do. So that's whether the body is trying to throw a ball, whether it's trying to write something on a piece of paper, read something on a piece of paper, or just move about in a coordinated fashion throughout the day. And the second thing is the motor system works with the eyes, and that's why it's really important for children to have well-developed motor movements and to develop those motor movements in infancy. That's why that is so key and can actually affect reading, writing, and so forth. And so you don't want to forget that this includes the vestibular system, because the vestibular system is connected to that motor system, right? That inner earpiece. And when the vestibular system is weak, that can contribute to having instabilities with the eyes, eye tracking, difficulties with jumping from one line to another, fixation, all that type of stuff. And then the last piece is the visual motor system, is what helps to coordinate all of these body movements, that they're fluid and so forth. And either, we're not clumsy, or we don't have poor hand-eye coordination. And I've talked a bit about that before. I will more in the future, but hand-eye coordination is huge, not just for things like playing sports. It's actually huge for being able to do things like reading and writing. It's something we really work on with whenever the dyslexia is present. So basically, these visual motor skills assist with things like balance, coordination, eye tracking, and even attention and focus. So it's not just something if there's an issue with dyslexia, it's also something I work with my clients, and we work on vision exercises even if there's issues with ADHD or ADD type behaviors and so forth, or even a diagnosis. So signs your child might have a weak visual motor system are things like poor hand-eye coordination, difficulty copying things from the board, right? Like looking at their paper and then looking up and so forth. That all gets messed up, especially when there's retained reflexes. And as I mentioned, difficulty reading, and it could be poor reading comprehension. Sometimes these kids their eyes and their visual motor system is working so hard to be able to do the decoding that they're not really retaining what they are doing or what they are reading and the content. And so as they get older, this is where they really start to slip through the cracks, because these kids can get away with it to about grade 3 and 4. And then as things go on, the marks start dipping more and more every year because they are required to read a lot more content, and they're having a really hard time keeping up with that content because they can't retain it. It's too much reading. They're having to work too hard. And some of these kids are like able to do it for a short while, the first 2 paragraphs, but then things really start to break down because they're basically reading on manual instead of on automatic. So other signs, and I've mentioned this before, is things like dysgraphia, poor handwriting, as well as poor body and spatial awareness. So bilateral coordination is another thing. So both being able to cross like the right hand say to their left knee, but also just being able to work one side of the body with the other side and so forth. So the key is well-developed lower brain levels, which is a big part of primitive reflex integration, but is not the only thing. We tend to get stuck on that lately in education. I see primitive reflex is a really popular buzzword, and I'm not trying to downplay it. It's great that it's getting the attention it deserves and needs to have, but it's not where it starts and it's not where it stops. So many people think that vision is all about the eyes, and it really and truly starts with a good, strong, developed lower brain levels, motor system, all of that type of stuff. If that's not happening, they'll pass an standard eye exam and so forth, but that system needs to be well developed for the eyes to function optimally. So the way it basically works is that the body develops the lower brain levels. And so if that body is not well developed, then the brain is not going to be well developed. And basically what's happening when those lower brain levels are weak, the cortex takes over the job because the brain is very adaptable, but it doesn't mean it's going to be optimal. So what's happening is the cortex is like, okay, these guys aren't doing their job. I've got to do the job. So now the cortex is too busy doing these guys' job to be able to do its job, which is things like executive functioning, right? Organizing, planning, impulse control, reasoning, decision-making, all of that type of stuff we want our kids to do, as well as the other functions like memory and being able to read and write and do all of those higher cognitive or critical thinking activities. So the body functions that are essentially behind the visual motor system and why and those areas that we really want to focus on is number one, good core posture. So I've talked about this a lot recently. If your child is slumpy, if they have poor posture, if the kid who's always laying back, all of that type of stuff, and sometimes it can be more subtle, it's not as obvious, that's a clue, especially if they have learning or behavior difficulties, that something is off. So good core posture is something you really want to work on and develop. A strong vestibular system, the eyes cannot remain stable or fixed if the vestibular system is weak or poor. And in a lot of these kids, it's underdeveloped and it's weak. So basically, the poor coordination of the vestibular system will affect everything from the gross motor to the fine motor, like the eyes. And so these kids might complain that the words jumble, that they jump, that they blur, or they might not complain at all because that's all they know and they think that's normal. Okay. So the last thing that really contributes to this good visual motor function, to be able to, move across a page or be able to write and copy from the board or be able to do their notes and go back to their workbook and so forth, is good head control. Again, something that we think, what does that have to do with vision, right? It's all about the eyes. No, it's not. So if certain primitive reflexes are retained, which I've talked about in previous videos, check them out, and there's poor head control, and basically the body is not separating certain movements very well from the head and the shoulders, then we're going to have issues with vision. So some of my kids, for example, are not very good at when they go to turn their head in certain ways, the shoulder goes with it, or they go like this and their whole body turns. All of these little subtle tests that we're checking for when I do the screening, whether I see them in clinic or they're in the program, we do the advanced brain screening. Those are all things that we check for to see what we need to work on. So it may not be obvious without that screening because sometimes it's very subtle. So all of that to say, the visual motor system is exactly as it says. It needs a strong motor system to work. And so what really irks me, to be totally honest, is when I talk to people who say, we've already tried vision therapy and it didn't work. And vision therapy is hands down phenomenal, but you have to do the right action at the right time. And too often people are doing vision therapy before the visual motor system is well developed. If those primitive reflexes aren't integrated, if those lower brain levels aren't strong, the vestibular system is weak, there's imbalances between brain hemispheres, all this type of stuff, the visual component is not going to get the results you are hoping for. I do a lot of vision exercises and so forth at the end of my 6-month program with my clients, but it's at the end. It's after we've got everything else rock solid. So let me know, do you see these signs in your kid? Do you see signs of poor visual processing? Do you suspect that visual motor function could be slowing them down more than maybe you previously thought? Are they someone who has difficulty copying notes from the board, poor writing, or maybe they can read, but they're not really grasping what they are reading? Are there clues that there is an issue with poor visual motor function? Let me know in the comments below. If you haven't already grabbed my free starter kit, do grab that. The Laser Focus Learner. It has some basic exercises and nutrition tips to start helping your child build a better brain so that they can learn, read, and focus better and regain their confidence, and you can regain your sanity. So thanks for watching. And if you do want to book a clarity call to learn more about my 6-month program, the Full Potential Formula, you can do that. And I'll post the link for that in the comments below as well. Thanks for watching.